Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone is okay, and I suppose welcome back, because it has been a short minute since we've done one of these, or at least 2 weeks anyway. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be back because actually, for once, we actually might have a bit of a positive discussion tonight, because crypto, Bitcoin, Tau, many others have actually done very well over the last few weeks, and I think it's time to have a look into that. And I'm going to try and I'll be as realistic as I always am, and sort of sentiment right now feels relatively positive, actually. Yes, strong moves of course have happened, and as long as we can sustain those, then I think we might be back. I'm loath to say we might be back, because that's what everyone says and then it all goes the other way. But it certainly feels like the tide has changed. So we'll dive into that and just see where things have gone. You can tell I've been away for a while because actually there's quite a few questions that have built up. Very BitTensor subnet centric. So we're going to talk about my views on subnets. I'll answer your questions as well. We'll dive into a little bit of the news, but try not to spend too much, and then we're going to go through quite a few altcoins to go through there. So yeah, plenty to run through. Obviously, if you've got any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. I will get round to those when I can. There is a poll. I can only put 4 options on there, so just trying to get a feeling for where people are with portfolio allocation within subnets, in inverted commas, alpha tokens of those subnets. Be interesting to see how that breaks down, so please feel free to contribute to that. Let's see. So Cliff didn't have any eggs. He's on a diet. I'm not on a diet, so I'm sure most of you are aware I signed up to run the London Marathon. That is this Sunday, so I'm in the tapering phase, as they call, which is kind of easing off the amount of running, and then towards the back end of this week I am going to be carb loading. And for someone my weight, I need to put on pretty much about 1,000 grams of carbs a day, which is equivalent to about 25 loaves of bread. So I am eating whatever I can. One of the things I am enjoying eating, these bad boys, Haribo Star Mix. And in a box this size, there's only 770 grams of carbs. That's not even a full daily allowance. Of course, I'm having a better diet than that, but that's just something to just pick on at the same time. So yeah, that's coming up. I'm feeling pretty prepared for it. I think the weather's getting hotter and hotter, so that should be interesting. And the only real pressure is I'm putting a time pressure on myself. I know I'll complete it, even if I have to crawl. It's just trying to do it in the time that I want to do it. But yeah, 6 months of running and training 4 times a week. Let's get this one done. And I'm looking forward to a break from that. But thanks for those. Yeah, thanks for the good wishes. Friday night, I actually travel down to London tomorrow to pick up your bib. You can't get it sent out to you. When I get my number and all that, I'll post it in Discord. And for those that are bored on Sunday, can follow my slog around town. But anyway, that's not what we're here for. Oh, what I will say, actually, funnily enough, I was thinking it is marathon related, because that is my life. I try to sort of like dedicate portions of the run to different things to think about. So whether that be my family or the military career or whatever, and of course I can't not spend a little bit of time thinking about crypto, thinking about RT and everything else. And I've decided to dedicate mile 21-22 to crypto. And typically that is sort of the nightmare mile. Most people's running plans don't go beyond 20 miles. So that first time you get into that 21-22 feels like an absolute nightmare. But when you get to the end of it, you're on pretty much a straight path. Down embankment towards the end, you kind of know you're in your last little block to finish. And I thought, what better sentiment than having to go through the pain that we sometimes have to go through in bear markets to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So mile 21-22 going to be dedicated to the RT group. So yeah, there we go. Right, let's jump into some charts. And hey, I get crypto bubbles up quite a lot when it's red, and I think it's only fair that we should really take a look at just how well altcoins have been performing. And this is only on the daily chart at the moment. Fartcoin leading the way. You can't see it because it's in the way, but that is at 23% on the day. Tau is at 12.5. Other ones that we're interested in, well, near for me is only at 4. Link's at 6. I saw ETH was doing like Kaz is at 11. So yeah, generally a very good day. Even Bitcoin, wherever it is, that's at 5.5. So on the day. And you have a look at the weekly, Tau 50% up on the week. Excellent movement over the last 7 days, which I find kind of amusing because obviously whilst I was away, I posted that Tau had made some moves, but I wasn't so confident it was going to be moving upwards. Well, of course, it did the opposite of what I said. So a nice, strong move there. And if we actually do look at Bitcoin, before we go into sort of the usual 4 charts that you see, I just want to kind of emphasize what we've kind of gone through, because since the all-time high back in January, we've actually done 11 weeks, 77 days of it collapsing all the way back down from 109-ish thousand down to what, 74 and a bit of change, a 32% drop over that 11 weeks. And that's the time we actually saw the turning point. And I mentioned last week again on that post that there was a bit of a W formation, which you can't quite see on the daily chart, but on the 4 hour it stands quite nicely. We had a retest of that 74,000 week and a bit ago. But since then, a really positively strong move from that bottom, finding ourselves at the moment, I mean, knocking on the door at 92,000. And when we have a look at some of the levels a little bit later on, that's some strong movement to get us to there. There are some real world events that are helping to drive that. Well, I would argue mainly as well that Donald has seemed to have shut his mouth a little bit of China and tariffs. So, that could all be undone in a moment. But for now, a really strong move. But actually, just broad brushing this, that although it was the bottom was 11 weeks ago, the real excitement, I mean, that's kind of the downtrend that we had. And then week and a half ago, 12 days ago, we actually came up, retested this level. Could have been an ideal opportunity for a rejection and a continuation of the down market. But actually, we broke through it. Then we did what we really needed to do. Instead of just storming through it, we spent a week just meandering around that $83,000 level. And then over the last 2 days, we've seen that next push up. And depending on what we get with the price action tomorrow, I mean, we close like this, going to be very strong. We get another green candle tomorrow for a bit of confirmation of a move going upwards. That's going to look very good in terms of where we're going. And if we just take these away just for a second, just throw some of the EMAs on. So I've got the 20, the 50 and the 200. And 50 and the 20 knocking us down. Even the 200 towards the end was kind of holding us back. We can actually kind of now see that actually the 50, the 20 and the 200, it's on the daily here, all converging on that 1 point at 85,000. And we have been able to then explode away from that. So a very positive mood. Obviously, pullbacks can happen, and we kind of want those to happen to show that there is some sustainability in this move going forward. That now that 85 level hard resistance that it was now a very strong support level. So that's what I'd be looking at. We'll go into it in a bit more detail, but just the fact those EMAs are all nicely crossing over there is looking very positive indeed. That reflected over on the 3-day time frame. These lines have been on the charts for a number of weeks now, and you can kind of see that 87 and a half level, which is kind of where we closed yesterday, was a fairly decent resistance level that we were talking about. You can even actually see a W formation of sorts here, and with a move going up like that, we were held at the neckline, or the waistline, should I say, and we've broken through. Now, the next level on the 3-day time frame is actually 92,500. So that felt like quite a way away, but with today's move, I mean, we're up $4,000 already today. That's not looking too far away. It has been a strong support level in the past, and even since we lost it way back in end of February, every retest we've had of it to date has seen some sort of rejection. So that would be a level that I would certainly be looking at. Maybe we do see some exhaustion there and a potential pullback. But as long as on the 3-day time frame we stay above that 87,500, and we already talked about the 85 level on the daily, then I don't necessarily see that as being too much of a problem. The real one confirmation for me that we're back in the bull market and we are going up is going to be that break in 95 and a half and a move back up there. And then I feel like we've pretty much got clear sky to the all-time high, or at least until sort of 106,000. I appreciate we spiked up into the all-time highs. So looking good. Now, Bitcoin dominance. I mean, despite the strong moves we've seen across the board, with the alt markets over the last week. Bitcoin dominance is still climbing. So yes, the top 100 are obviously doing well, but the remainder are probably lagging behind on what Bitcoin's doing, because we're actually at 64.6% at the moment. Now, I talked about that 64 level for weeks, and we've retested it. I actually think, you know, the speed, the angle that this is going up, I wouldn't be surprised to see a pullback on Bitcoin dominance leading to a mini alt season, because, you know, we need some sort of respite at some point. And even if we start to go to the right, so if we just start to move sideways for a bit, that should lead to some improvement, significant improvement against Bitcoin for altcoins in general. We then look at total market cap, total 3, and yes, positive move, of course. We're moving away from that bottom. We're down at 660 billion. We're now knocking on the door of 800 billion. So a strong move there, about 15% increase, maybe a little bit more. And there is some form of a W formation, but we haven't really seen that strong move that you will see in a second on BitTensor that we've seen on Bitcoin. And actually, there's still quite a bit of noise in our way. So generally, that's kind of reflecting where we were with Bitcoin dominance, or the opposite of Bitcoin dominance, that actually alt seasons in general haven't popped yet. And when I show you my portfolio a little bit later on, it's still quite heavy with Bitcoin. And that's just because I'm waiting to see where it goes. I accept that there are outliers, and unfortunately one of those outliers is BitTensor, which I would like to have moved in some of that BTC into BitTensor, and I'm sure that I will, but I want to wait for that confirmation to do it. I'm happy to just trade that on actual confirmation rather than just where it could go. So holding my horses there. And then of course BitTensor, which we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about. No, that's not BitTensor. BitTensor. Lots of different things to talk about here, but one of the things we've been looking at was these copy and paste lines, and the big one down there was actually around about 290, which we broke through. And it's funny because the last time I was on the call, I don't know who said it, I'm going to go back and watch the last call. Someone said, Harry, why don't you just put a buy order in at 170? And I said, no, I'm not going to do that, because what's the point? From down there I'll be watching it and I'll be able to make my move. Well, I tell you what, if I had listened to whoever that was, we only went down to 169. A buy order at 117 would have been absolute nuts and a great positive move there. But we can all live in regret with those kind of decisions. You just got to make your mind up. And as I said, I was away. I didn't want to do anything. I got back on Friday. I had a look at where the charts were. I was happy with what I saw, and I got back the remaining sideline portions of my, USDT back into BitTensor. Yeah, okay, it's about 250, 265, that kind of level by the time I sort of did a few different buys in. So I missed a fair chunk of the move. That stuff I haven't staked. I'm just going to wait to see, and we'll talk about. Mark, okay, it was you. Well, I owe you a beer for not listening to you. So the cuddle in a few weeks' time, if you're there, I'll definitely buy you a beer for that. But yeah, am I disappointed that I didn't do it? Of course, yeah, because that would have been an epic move even if I did decide to take a sidestep. But we've got back in, and if we all think that BitTensor is going to go where it's gone, then that's fine. And that's just part of trading. I can't beat myself up about it. The assessment that I was making, the decisions I was basing it on, I had to wait for confirmation. And it wasn't just a breach of this line, it was a confirmation. There was plenty of other factors that I relied on, not to mention the fact that I was away. So it wasn't too much I could have done anyhow. Right. No comments so far to go through. I'm going to rattle through just a little bit of news kind of stuff, and then we'll get into some proper look at Bitcoin. And one thing I wanted to talk about, because we kind of ended quarter one, particularly March, a lot of selling. You can't see it on the ETF flow anymore because we kind of moved past March. But March was a bad month for Bitcoin. A lot of negativity, a lot of sentiment was in the gutter, fear and greed. We were down in the tens. We talked about buying when there's blood in the street. But it actually turns out, as we all knew it would, that whilst we were all fretting that the bull market was over, while we were all selling, there were whales accumulating over 200,000 Bitcoin in March alone. When we thought it was the end, the whales, and I'm not necessarily talking about the ETFs here because generally they were quite red as well. I'm talking about, just market makers, institutions, whatever, continuing to buy, which just goes to show, and it just reinforces that fact that, if you truly got the conviction that we are remaining in a bull market, regardless of sentiment on crypto Twitter, what I may say, what Simon may say, what Discord may say, buying and sort of having that confidence to buy when everyone else is telling you that's the wrong thing to do, majority of the time turns out to be the correct decision. So again, put that one back in your sort of, your notebook of, right, next time that happens, I've got even more evidence to suggest that I need the conviction to go and do that, because that's exactly what has gone on here. And these boys don't mess around, boys and girls don't mess around. And that just goes to show there. In terms of the ETFs, we are seeing BlackRock. Do you remember we were pretty much close to 3 weeks worth of just reds from BlackRock, which is canary in the coal mine for me. That's kind of turned around. There have been a lot of 0 days so far, but we're still buying. And actually yesterday there's $381 million worth of Bitcoin that was purchased across all of the ETFs. So confidence seems to be returning. Now this is something that people have talked about, and hey, I've got my view on it, and I'm sure people have their views as well. And it's people talking about the fact that Bitcoin is decoupling from the S&P, from the NASDAQ. For me, I've got to say, I just don't buy it. I cannot buy into that. I mentioned this in Discord when someone asked about it. Bitcoin can decouple for a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe even 12 weeks. And I'm not going to buy into it. I can't. Because for me, it's too volatile. We don't see big companies. I mean, there are a few companies that are investing in Bitcoin, but there aren't a lot of companies. So it's not that hedge against the stock market like gold, like the yen is, and a few other currencies that people flow into when they are concerned about how the stock markets are reacting. And whilst Bitcoin, has done well over the last couple of weeks, there have been great concerns about the stock market. The word recession is flowing around, and we've seen that the stock markets have fallen faster and further than Bitcoin has done. But then Bitcoin pumped harder leading up to that correction. So it didn't have, it had more fat in it to cushion the fall, shall we say. What do I need to say, what, Bitcoin has finally decoupled from the stock markets? And for me, time-wise, it's kind of hard to say, isn't it? But let's just say minimum of 6 months of a sort of contrary action. But what I'd really say is, if the stock markets are in a bear market and Bitcoin's in a bull market, then we know it's decoupled. Until then, they may not go up and down exactly on line with each other, but they're probably going to rhyme. And so that's what I really need to see in terms of where that go. Now, this article kind of gives classic Cointelegraph sort of viewpoint of both sides of it. So that's just mine in terms of where my thought process on that is. Okay, no more news. I'm sure there's plenty of news. I mean, there has no more news, but I've seen some little news articles at the moment talking about, a lot of the trade deals that the United States are trying to negotiate with countries other than China at the moment, which I'm sure is helping provide more confidence for the stock market and everything else. We have seen, and we'll have a look at it in a moment, how far the dollar has been falling, which is kind of what we want to see. I mean, it was at like 113 at one stage. It's sub 100 at the moment. So we may see a pullback on that, and we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, there are sort of news events like that, but nothing that's really kind of caught my eye. In terms of, let's start looking at Bitcoin higher time frames and work our ways back down. You're all very familiar with this chart here. I'm actually just really interested at the moment in the yellow boxes. I need to keep the older ones, but can you see what the price action has done? We've got the yellow box, remember, liquidation levels. So we've got this area of liquidation levels been building up, since March, 89,500 to 91,500. We have wicked straight into that over the last 12 hours. We've really not moved any further from that. There are more liquidation levels at around about 95,000. I didn't bother to put on this because it's not as deep, but we've got into that 91,600 or 91,500 level. We've cleared it out. And the real question now is, where does it go from here? There isn't too much above it. When you look at, what am I on here? It's on the 1 month time frame. This needs refreshing. Give me a refresh here. Sorry. Okay, see, there's nothing above where we are at the moment. Nothing had been building previously, and just stuff is starting to come through. So in terms of sort of trying to chase those liquidation levels, there's not really an appetite right now on those low timeframes. I'm sure if we go on to a 3-month time frame, we may see something a little bit higher. Just waiting for it to load. But again, there's not too much. There's little bits. I mean, when I say there's not too much, there's 200 million there. 97,000, 95,000, each of the 50 levels, there's 125. So probably over that 1,000 level, there's $1 billion worth of liquidations there. So there is some, but not these big chunks that we've seen here that have been taken out. And really, we're not looking at anything till around about psychological level of 100K. And so the question now is, do market makers look to try and chase what's down here? And perhaps we could tie that in with buy orders, which there are buy orders in and around 81 to 83,000, which kind of lines in with what we see there. Or does it then start to actually make that move up to the 100K level? So that's kind of where I've got the eyes at the moment. We talked about resistance levels in our way as well. And one of the things we need to consider, and these fib levels have been fantastic throughout, we've got a 618 on the horizon, which actually at 94,200, so kind of near that 95,000 level we were talking about. And I do think actually perhaps, although there's no liquidation levels up that level at the moment, the shorts have been taken out, maybe there is that move back up to that 94 level, maybe even as high as 95, taking us up to this sort of resistance level. I'll put a ray on sort of there, which then would tie in with that smaller, spread $1 billion worth of liquidations. Maybe it wicks into that, but we actually see the candle close back along the 618 before some form of correction. I'm not necessarily saying it go down to 82,000, but some sort of correction, and then we stabilize from it. I think just looking at that, there's plenty of evidence to me that suggests that actually could be something that we would need to consider. One thing I do want to, alleviate, and we've all been caught out with it again, is the good old 50 EMA on the weekly time frame. I mean, it now really does. 3 weeks ago, we were here. It was resting on it, wicking through it. We weren't really too sure what was happening. 2-3 weeks of green candles, and it just looks like every other bull market now. A nice retest of the 50 EMA before further movement to the upside. And again, on the weekly time frames, really kind of looking at that 94 level. And then after that, I mean, I'll do some more rays. But I'd say sort of there. And probably even that's at 104. So we've got like 93,400, 94,000 on a weekly time frame. We want to be closing above that and holding that 93,400 and then that 104. And we break that 104, I think we've got a new run for the all-time high. But that's just on the weekly. Takes a little bit longer. But yeah, without fail, 50 EMA just comes and catches. And actually, now that we've seen that green move away, it doesn't look so scary anymore. It kind of looks like, yeah, that makes sense. We had such a strong move. It's come back down and now we resume course and we all feel very comfortable about it. 3-4 weeks ago, we were worried this thing ain't going to hold and we were all drawing patterns down to 50,000 or whatever. So good to see that that's sort of where that is looking. I'm trying to decide whether to do a bit more. I'll do a bit more Bitcoin now, and then we'll come back. So let's just take it. We've done the day. Well, we'll start with the daily because we have had 2 very strong days at the moment. Now we've got the candles, we've got the vector candles on there, we've got the EMA clouds, we've got plenty of other things as well to kind of show us. But on the daily, we can kind of see that actually this is going to close in 4 hours time. I mean, I'd be amazed if it doesn't as another vector candle. So we're going to have vector candles all the way from 85,000 level we talked about, all the way up to wherever this one decides to close. And actually, there's quite a lot of wicks around where we are at the moment, which may suggest that we're turning around. So one, we are leaving vector candles. We've had strong moves from that. We're left for dead the 50, the 10, the 20, the 200 EMAs. And we're potentially running into some previous support, now resistance. So a pullback does feel like, this could actually happen. And just look, strong moves like this, we pull back into it. Doesn't mean we're going to lose it all. Doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but strong moves up always seem to get pulled back. And we talk about vector candle recoveries all the time here. And so just make a note, however this candle closes, whatever the top of this candle closes at, to wherever this candle opened, is going to be another vector candle. Are you guys, I'm not buffering too bad, am I? I've just got a warning notice saying that it is. Hopefully that's okay, or it'll stabilize itself out. But yeah, we will we'll have to try and double check that. I'm a bit worried it's going to drop off. Okay, anyway, I'll keep on going until someone tells me I've lost it. So yeah, daily, I'm seeing that. We drop down onto sort of the 4 hour. Sorry if I've just stopped. I can just see the image of what's actually going on. It's buffering a little bit. Yeah, and I'm not sure if that is everyone else in the house just jumping on the internet or what. But we'll keep on going. All right. So what have we had here? We got this W formation on the 4 that we talked about. Then we've had a bit of a funny one because, you know, normally what we'd like to see is a rise 1, some sort of nice consolidation, continue, nice consolidation, continue, nice consolidation. And we have had that. It just doesn't look like how we normally see it. So bear with me on it. There's a W, rise 1, but the consolidation is just being flat. Yeah. Just being flat. And it's been flat. You know, it's a couple of weeks worth of just sort of flat price action we talked about. And now we're in that rise 2 on the 4 hour. Don't know where the top of that's going to be. Normally we'd see the pullback sort of drop back in. That would be where I would logically see it, sort of a recovery to the 50 EMA as well, which this one did do. It just went sideways to get to it. But I would expect to see on the 4 hours some sort of pullback. I just don't know when. We just don't know when this is going to happen. We're going to be waiting for sort of some indication volume is slowing down. We have got a blue vector candle at the moment. You know, if this one were to, in the next 30 minutes, close sort of back down at 91,000, maybe that is a stopping vector candle and we start to see that. But let's just let that build naturally and we can go from it. But I think we are probably in a rise 2 situation on the 4 hour at the moment. And however far that then takes us, you know, we would then expect a rise 3 at some stage, M formation, move back down as we've drawn before. I won't waste too much time. Now on the 1 hour, oh, I should have got rid of that. Let me just, can't even click on it. There we go. Got to get rid of this as well. I mean, on the 1 hour, we're kind of seeing the same thing, but we're actually starting to see more of these vector candles. For those of you that missed the pump, but wanting to maybe try and sort of get back in and try and find a level, the good thing about the 1 hour is we will see, even if we're going to be climbing up on the 4 hour, we haven't finished rise 2. What we should, you know, expect to see is on the 1 hour candles coming back down, certainly attacking the 10, if not the 20, but ideally the 50 EMA. And it could still be climbing on the 4 hour. But if you start to see a move back down here, you know, taking out some of these vector candles and then starting to stall for a reversal, you could actually find yourself a nice little entry point for Bitcoin to maybe see that next ride or continue this ride up on there. Got to be careful with it. I know a lot of people like to take trades for a longer period of time. And if that's the case, you may want to just, you know, wait for the actual consolidation period before we see a rise 3. But for anyone that is looking for short-term plays, a 1 hour time frame, you know, we could certainly be seeing moves back down to, I'd say 88,000, maybe 89, but certainly taking these vector candles out. And they just get cleared out. Look below price. Vector candles get taken out. So, you know, don't think now this time is going to be different. It won't be. I'm almost certain of that. Right, we'll leave Bitcoin there. We might come back onto Bitcoin a little bit later on. We've got so many questions to get through. I think we'll start with these ones. And Paul put one in last week. Towers outperformed BTC and most alts in the last few days. Is the bottom, or is its bottom in? I mean, Tower's done, you know, fantastically well in terms of that sort of bottom. So you said it on the 18th, which was kind of down here. So it was a nice sort of retest bottoming pattern. And I think, you know, this on the 4 hour time frame here, that for now, yes, the bottom is in. And that's a politician answer if you ever see one, because, so many things can happen. Issues with China, Trump opening his mouth, problems again in Ukraine, something else sort of rearing its head. I mean, there's the whole talk about Powell getting sacked, which I didn't bother bringing up in the news because it hasn't actually happened yet. But what we can say is that we've had that, strong move out from the 170 that I missed, coming back down for this nice little retest here, and then we've had that strong, and it has been a very strong move up. Now, I do expect at some stage Tau, and we'll go into it when we do this, to retest. Sorry, my dog's going crazy. He's obviously seeing a cat in the garden. Some sort of retest. We can't just have a staircase up like this, sort of steep as it is, without some sort of pullback. But to be fair, it's been fairly natural on the 4 hour. There's no vectors really left. Everything's right down here at 240. So between now and then, we've actually got 50 EMA here. Now, the 800 EMA we're running into. And so this actually could be a turning point for us. And the 800 EMA is probably going to line up with the 200 EMA quite nicely on the daily. So yes, I think the local bottom is in for Tau. I think it has been a strong move. I'm not selling anything at the moment, but my eyes on the daily has to be on this level here. Sort of that 360 level. It ties in with a lot of other things as well. Because we just draw that line here. We got the tops from the summer, where we had that sort of like M and a W formation. We've had this sort of price action here. We've also then got it kind of getting close to this 200 EMA, and it may well just spike to hit that. But then, and I haven't drawn it, but let's just throw a fib on for S and giggles on the daily, and bang, there you go. 50% retracement line is on the 200 EMA. So kind of where we are with the price at the moment, it may be a turnaround point. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to drop. You got to remember, we've just put in a higher high. I expect some pullback. I'd like to see, down to 300 potentially, maybe getting down as low as 275, putting in that higher low and start to build from it. That would be very good. That would be a confirmation that the local bottom is in. And unfortunately, this little move here isn't doing that because it wasn't a higher high, it was a higher low. So we've had to wait for this move for that to happen. I think James did put in Discord, again, an inverted head and shoulders, which, yep, I think, why would you do it? Maybe that as a neckline. So there's potentially still a bit more room to run from that one. But yeah, I think you can definitely say that as well. Okay, going to get talking about subnets now. I'm gonna have a drink of water. There's been many discussions. So this from Chris. I don't know which Chris. There's a few of you. There's been many discussions about subnets and alpha tokens recently in Discord and Telegram. Yes, I have. But I note that you've stated you aren't going to get involved. Why? There seems to be a lot of potential for good returns, and you are generally positive on BitTensor itself. Also, it's a shame, as you have previously been very helpful answering questions on confusing matters. I don't think this has a quick answer. So bear with me. And there's a couple of other questions here that kind of go on about subnets and alpha, and I'll come back to discuss those. No, I'm not getting involved I'm not getting involved in the subnets, and from a price point of view. So I'm not getting involved in the alpha token from those. And there's a couple of reasons why, if I'm perfectly honest. One, I find it incredibly confusing because, one, we've got the amount of subnets that are just, every couple of days, a new subnet's coming on, which, if you really want to invest in something, you want to try and understand it. So they're sort of trying to build that picture of your fundamental knowledge of whatever it is that subnet is doing. Or you can just look at it from a price action point of view. I'm just looking at the TA side of the alpha token, and it's just too much to handle. You've got to consider what BitTensor's price is doing. Then you've got to look at how alpha's doing. You're going to have to consider the emission rates and that ratio between BitTensor and the alpha token. And for me, it's just too much. And I'll be honest with you, it worries me a little bit because I get a kind of a vibe from it from 2021. And if I'm honest, for those of you that were around in 2021, this is the kind of vibe I get. Do you remember us messing around with Tube Finance and creating liquidity pools by matching two tokens together. But we were worried about, should we do it in Tomb? Should we do Tomb share? Should we do a Tomb bond instead? And they had different lockup periods and different rewards. And it was, we all tried to get involved in it, pretending that we knew what we were doing. But the reality was it was incredibly complicated. And this thing blew up, just like this thing blew up. And I'm not suggesting that BitTensor is another Wonderland. What I'm saying is that sometimes if it doesn't make sense to you and you're not too sure how to get it, get your head around it, just don't involve yourself. And we tried to pretend that we understood what was going on, and we justified 98,000 APR because of game theory and everything else. But the reality was that we should have seen the wood through the trees. And I just have PTSD. I just don't really want to involve myself in things like this. And Abracadabra was another one. And whilst these didn't cause the bear market of 2022, the over leveraged positions that people were taking, the greed that people were taking, meant that when we felt the bear market of 2022, their losses were greater than they should have been because people were overextending themselves. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be caught out like that. And I understand that a lot of information has been thrown out by Siam and other people in Discord to sort of get their heads around it. And if you are the type of person that understands that and you're willing to take that risk, then I say absolutely go for it. Grab it and go for it. And good luck to you. And I will be the first person, one, asking for you to buy me a beer because you'll be so rich, but two, patting you on the back for doing it. I just don't want to. I don't want to stress myself out with it. I don't want to waste all that time having to learn about it. And I get it. Some of you aren't bothered about learning about it. I'm happy to follow people who know it better. Whatever they say, I'm going to go and do. And that's fine. But that's just not how I operate. So it's too much for me. So I'm not going to be very helpful, I'm afraid. Not on purposely, like I'm not going to help you because I'm not getting involved. I just don't understand enough to do that. In fact, I felt almost embarrassed to have to ask where I could even find where the subnet prices were today on Discord, is how far away from it. It doesn't mean that I don't like BitTensor or Tau or anything like that, but I will say that this could help hinder. Sorry, it could help BitTensor, of course it can, but it could also hinder BitTensor. That has to be accepted, because depending on the success or failure of alpha tokens, it's going to either leave a positive taste in people's mouths or a very negative one, and people could just flock away from BitTensor. They could really mess up on the alpha token, take what little BitTensor they have left, sell that and never return, and we just end up getting selling pressure. So something to certainly be aware of. When I was thinking about answering this question, it kind of got me asking the questions, because I didn't do a live talk last week, about what the hell happened to Mantra. Because, overnight Mantra went from top 20, $6.5 billion market cap to almost out of the top 100, losing 90% of its value. And the token, instead of being worth $9, is now worth 50 cents. And whilst we still don't really understand what's happened, at least I've tried to look into what's happening, one of the key things that is clear that's gone on is that actually this was a token that was very heavily staked, which created significant liquidity issues on exchanges, which then meant when market makers were doing OTC deals, that led to massive liquidation events on people that actually collateralized their token, which caused the price to shoot up so sharply. And that's a careful reminder that actually that could be almost any altcoin, particularly altcoins that have staking and decent staking rewards. And BitTensor is one of those at the moment. And so BitTensor has an ecosystem which has a significant amount of its token, its circulating supply, which forms its market cap, actually staked, doing nothing. It's either locked in root or it's locked in the subnets and converted into alpha token. I don't know the figure off by hand. Maybe someone could tell me, but I bet you it's over 75% of the circulating supply is actually staked, which actually means that the market cap, the liquid market cap, is not what we think it is. It's much smaller. And so if you were to get market makers, and make no mistake, market makers play every single token you could imagine, and 9 times out of 10, they do it OTC. Why do they do it OTC? 1, they don't need it on the books. And 2, OTC, they generally get a pretty decent discount with the volumes that they're buying. And the CEO came on and he explained that for his market makers, they were offering anywhere from 30 to 50% discount. Now, he claimed that they were vesting periods that were tied in with all of that, and I completely get that. But that's why people do it. And so they will drive price action where they want it to go, whether that is dictated by the project. So they either want you to defend a certain market makers to defend a certain level if people start to sell, or they want to pump the price. And then they may look to exit their bags if they're unsavory characters. Again, I'm not saying that that's people in BitTensor, but there are questions asked as to who is doing this, and we've seen massive falls in BitTensor's prices. That's if you think about over the last year, we went from the Binance pump down to the bottom here. That was an 80% fall. Mantra's was only 90, 10% more. And then this one here, it's going to be almost the same, 77%. So we've seen massive falls. Now, they didn't happen overnight, unlike Mantra did, but that's likely, we don't know, but that is likely driven in part by market maker manipulation, by market makers driving the price wherever they want to go. I remember when the price is falling, they're buying, okay? So they may sell into the rally and buy into the drop, okay? So it just was a careful, considered reminder for me that altcoins, one, we can pretend we know about them. We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And so they're pretty shady. And occasionally the music stops. The music stops like it did on Mantra. Absolutely collapsed. And it pumped hard last year after the election and the inauguration, and then dropped. And this is when market maker activity was going on, as per the CEO's comments. Reef, another one. The reason I brought that up, there's some news articles which I haven't bothered to go through, but one of the market makers for Mantra was also the CEO and founder of Reef, which I did invest in during the last bull market, and then we saw some pretty shady shit. But then we actually saw this drop there, which doesn't look so bad compared to the rest, but that was an overnight drop again, which dropped down. Or we can think about, Terra UST, when that fell off a cliff. Again, why did that do it? Because they had an unsustainable staking rewards, didn't they? Well, yeah, APY for staking, 20%. And then we've got the Luna token itself. So for me, it's just a reminder. It's too confusing. I don't understand it. I would just be gambling with it. And because of that, I'm just going to stay away from it. I'm happy to stick with BitTensor and put my risk in there. And the root staking rewards are more than fine for me for now. I'm absolutely happy with where that is going. And the reason I asked here about the portfolios, it's interesting that I had 22 votes. Actually, over 3/5 of people actually haven't put anything into subnets yet. But some people have put in 14. Some people have put in 20, 25% or more. And I suppose the question I ask you of that is, one, the ball's on you, well done. But two, what's your plan? And it's a rhetorical question, obviously, but what is your plan? Because as I understand the alpha tokens, it's not about the grass is always greener in terms of, it's done X well, but I wonder how much better it could do in a month's time. So the grass is green, I'll just sit and hold on it, like we do with traditional altcoins in a bull market, because this can seesaw and flip very quickly in terms of where you sort of balance it out. And going back to that liquidity side of things, the concern that I have is the markets for alpha tokens. You can only buy individual alpha tokens against Tau. So there's very little kind of market for that to be going on. So if they do move up in value, I don't want to say price because I know it's against Tau, but they do move up in price or value, sorry. When you go to sell, what is the slippage going to be to sell that if liquidity is quite low? And because of that, you need to think about how you're going to get out of these things, especially if you are following, a group of people that are all doing exactly the same play and are waiting for exactly the same signal to get out. And then we do get situations like Time and Wonderland where people are rushing to an illiquid market to try and get out as quick as they can. So bear that in mind with sort of how you're doing it and what you're doing it. And if some of the figures that I saw on Telegram are right in terms of potential returns, sort of 300 to 500x, then why do you need to put half your pot in, or maybe not half, 25%? Just you could put 10% of your pot in, get that 50x. It's still going to outperform the rest of the 90%, but you're not risking it in case it goes horribly wrong. I am risk averse when it comes to things like this. That's why I still have quite a lot of Bitcoin. And that is a very long-winded answer for what I was trying to get on. So apologies there, but I think just trying to explain it, I'm not hating on it because I don't know enough about it. But, that's just where I'm. And maybe, next week when I'm not out doing 4 runs a week and I got a bit more time on my hands, maybe I'll look into this a bit more and I'll have changed my mind. But as it currently sits at the moment, I'm fine. And I did go on to Tau Stats. I started having a look at some of these. And it doesn't look like price has done particularly well. It's going to be difficult to do. Okay, so this one, first one, brilliant. That one actually has done very well. Okay, looks very much like but that one's done well. Okay, I'll anyway, let's pick another one. And I don't even know what these are, what they do. But again, this one hasn't really done much in that time. Let's go on to a different page. Otherwise, we'll just subnets. There we go. Page 3, sports tensor. I don't know what you are. Again, falling away and continuing to fall away. And I could go through more. I'm sure the point is, we talked about a 2 month to 6 month window of waiting for this to settle out. We're just jumping in a bit too early at the moment, and then you're going to be that slippage and for it to fall back down. And then any gains you make, it's actually recovering initial losses. And if these are going to be as colossal as they are, perhaps it's actually, less speed and just sort of waiting for this to actually start to pick up. Just my opinion on it. But to go on to Brett's answer, he did an allocation percentage into alpha, looking at Tau Stats, 24-hour balances changed, positive and negative yields. I honestly can't help you with it. I'm sorry. Is it something to do with the fact that the ratio of alpha to Tau is what's changing? Maybe it's because Tau's moving up so strongly, the alpha's lagging behind, but I can't help you on that one, I am afraid. Chris, I'm going to answer all the Tau ones and then I'll come back to the other questions. Thoughts on staking Tau through Kraken? Some of it. So I actually logged on finally onto Kraken, which took a bit, and I had a look. And you can earn somewhere from 6 to 12% by staking your BitTensor. There are no lockup timeframes, a bit like how it is on the Root network. You can pretty much unstake straight away. Yeah, potentially. I suppose I don't know what the actual APY, because I don't bother checking it, is at the moment on Root network. But if there, I couldn't read in the documentation if you're going to get 6 or 12 or it's going to change constantly. And so, I feel like Kraken are going to hold an edge on you, and that's why they do it. So they'll take a little bit, in the back pocket themselves. And it's so easy to stake it yourself, even if you did it on separate wallets. I don't see the point in you needing to do it via an exchange. So personally, I wouldn't. But if that's what you need to do, then by all means, assuming that is in the ballpark, 6 to 12% is in the ballpark of what you're getting if you did it yourself, then fine, go for it. But I just wouldn't bother. You talked about just Kraken. When I did log on to Kraken, I actually did get a notification saying that I had to update some details. It was just, are you a high net worth investor or retail scum? It was pretty quick one to fill out. I think it's the FCA compliance rules, you may have to do that every year. So that's probably why people are getting that notification. Potential selling zones for Tau. I kind of talked about that 360 level. I'm not selling there unless we see a correction from it. And if it happens too quickly, then I just won't be able to. And we can have a look at some other ones a little bit later on. I don't know the name here. Someone's put, hi, Harry. Honest opinion on being too heavy on Tau as opposed to being in CAS, blue chip, alts, as altcoins may pump at different rates over the coming month and move profits into other alts. That is one way of doing it. And, that is certainly how we used to do it in the past. And Simon is very invested in Tau. And that's why he is almost 100% in BitTensor. What you're suggesting, what is too heavy? My portfolio at the moment looks a little bit like this. I'm 25% in Tau, 35% in Bitcoin. You can assume 25% of that Bitcoin is going to go back into Tau at some stage. So about 50% in Tau, when I start to balance that one out. I've got a couple of other safe altcoins. The riskiest there is probably SPX, the meme coin. But, that's not exactly a, widespread of blue chips. It is blue chips. But it's what you really want to get out of it. Percentage wise. Where were we? Because X wise, with those safer blue chips, higher market caps, there's, less chance you're going to hit 100x on some of those, to be perfectly frank. And I'd class Bitcoin probably in the same realm as that. Getting 100x on Bitcoin now seems probably unlikely to me. But it's then just trying to balance that out. I like having at least a little bit of a spread, because as you say, some things move, you can take profit. I was able to do that with SPX and with NEAR. That went into Bitcoin, and then hopefully that Bitcoin can then move into Tau, and it will just be a nice kind of like round move of just accumulating more Tau, even if the price is going up. So I kind of like to just play it that way. And I learned that the hard way. I mean, last cycle, I was like 90 tokens at one stage. It was ridiculous. So I don't think BitTensor is a bad one if you want to be heavy in that, because it's obviously in a good sector. It's pretty much the leader in that sector. It's got the subnets, which is often the variety. It's been heavily talked about at the moment, which is good. Although there are negatives that we could mention about that in a moment. You have the likes of Grayscale back in, and the funds and everything else. So there's a lot of fundamentals which are saying that's a positive thing to get in. And then you've got some good price action on top of that. But I will always be someone that I'm not going to go 100% into any one thing. That's just it. Right, I think that's all of the BitTensor comments. So we'll have a look at some of the other comments now, and then the charting side of that. So someone's asked about thoughts on the gas BTC and the spiky fade. Right, I've got to admit, the spiky fade, the gas BTC trade, I think you just need to forget about it. I don't think it's a valid play right now. And you've got to remember that the spiky fade worked because gas BTC stayed flat for a long time. It just stayed in that range, and we could just pick at 20% moves quite comfortably. But we're not in that. We're still in a downtrend. You don't know, because you've got to buy gas first. That's the move. You just don't know how good or bad that's going to be. And so that's the risk, and especially where it is at the moment, because this would have been a place you sell, and you'd be sitting in Bitcoin waiting for gas to return. So maybe you could argue there's a line to be drawn here, and maybe in the future gas gets down to like this level, and you may be able to get back up there. But I just don't think it's the play that it once was. So for me, I don't even look at it. I have it on the chart because people ask me every so often about it. But personally, I wouldn't waste your time. I think there's a lot better pairs that you could look to trade. I mean, even the CAS Tau is probably better than looking at this one. If you were to do the spiky fade side of it, the whole point is that you need like 6 months of just stationary price action. I mean, you could argue that there was some stationary price action even to here. And there was a couple of 3 maybe moves from that. But once it lost that level, it hasn't regained it. So you're now looking, the clock resets now. You're looking for 6 months from whenever this settles. And then by then we're at the end of the bull run. I mean, who knows? So not for me. Thoughts on Casper chart and the upcoming mainnet launch, major exchange launch too. I don't know anything fundamentally about Casper. I don't know when mainnet is. I am surprised it's not on a major exchange yet. It seems odd, to be honest. He had such a good run in 2024 and a pretty good fall. But looking at the price side of things, it's done well today. It's been doing well quite nicely. A matter of fact, here we go. It's kind of looking a little bit like BitTensor in terms of, I must have drawn this some other time. So we've got the fib level here. But look, we found that bottom, nice W formation on the daily time frame here. It then, as we talked about with Bitcoin, it got back to the waistline and it consolidated. It sort of built its time up there. The 50, the 20, and the 10 EMA were all nicely converging on each other. And it showed great strength. It went straight through it, straight through the 800 EMA. Has left a vector candle behind here, which we may return to. And we've gone through this fib level. So I kind of see, assuming the market continues, and I think it will be market driven, it's going to go to the 0.5 again, that 10.5 cents probably, before we see a real contesting of it. And there's so many things that tie in with that. Obviously, it's the 0.5 fib. We've got the 200 EMA and the daily. We've got sort of, these sort of support levels previously, which could then act as resistance for it to get through. So I think that's it. I would suggest, much like I've said with some of the other ones, strong moves like this, expect some sort of pullback. But if we can close above the 382 and the 800 EMA, then actually, before we even get to these vector zones, there's something that might hold us before we see another move. So it's looking strong, and it hasn't looked strong for ages. So that's good to see. It's had its hard times in terms of sort of this pattern here. Almost pretty much going all the way back to price. It did of November 2023. So it's round tripped over 2 years. Classic Bart Simpson, actually. Okay. We've done that one. Wasn't anything up there. Thoughts on Fartcoin and SPX 69,000? Well, I'm in SPX 69,000, it's had an ever interesting move. Fartcoin, what a player Fartcoin has been. Not something I've really got into. An AI meme coin, it's definitely sparked the imagination of the juveniles. And why wouldn't it? That's not it. It's over $1 now. And it's just had such a strong move. Where was it? The market retest of April time. It got down to 35 cents. It's pretty much 3x'd in the last 2.5 weeks. Looking really strong in terms of where it's going. I mean, inauguration day got up to $2.3. So, to all-time high. There's still a doubling from there. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's out. But I think meme coins have their part to play. I don't think by any means they are done. We get a bull market, we get degens, meme coins always do something. I'm sure there'll be more meme coins that will come about. But I think the likes of Fartcoin, SPX to a certain extent as well, have at least struck a chord with the meme coin community. And you got to remember, for meme coins, it takes that hype, it takes that narrative, and both of those still have that. I still see plenty of people talking about both. Fartcoin more at the moment, I will accept. Murad, who was the biggest SPX, he's been taking it in the trenches, a little bit like Saylor does in bear markets, because he's round tripped. I think he had like a 60 million bag, and it went down to about 6 million because he refused to sell. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on with that. But that is taking a little bit of the shine off SPX's talk about ability, if that's a term, because that's what people are talking about at the moment. But I don't think meme coins are necessarily done. In terms of a chart for Fartcoin, I mean, look at it. Correction down here, got back above the 50 EMA, mess between the 50 to 10 and the 20s, built strength of it, it's come back up, and it's just using the 10 and the 20 at the moment. Yeah, I expect to pull back to the 50 at some stage on the daily, but it's looking good right now. I mean, the problem with this is I'll draw a fib, but 133. That'd be where I'd be looking at, if I'm being honest. Go down the 4 hour. Let's get rid of the fib now because it'd be far too confusing. And again, just seems quite healthy in terms of how it's how it's just building itself up. Moves up, periods of consolidation, moves up, periods of consolidation. And this kind of looks like we're in a moving up kind of period. It may not have that much more to go because we have gone from 84 cents to $1.10. But it's not nice moving up, and we'll consolidate probably to catch up with the 50 EMA. And as long as we keep hold of it, you're probably in a good entry position. Might be one actually to consider perp plays on, depending on the funding rate. But yeah, that might be something that I might consider, because for the eagle-eyed of you, I do have 6% USDT still on the side, and that is kind of going to be used for either something new or perp plays. So I think that's an option there. In terms of SPX, not looking as good, I'll be honest. It has been consolidating up and down, but in this period here, I mean, there were some great moves to be had if you were trading this, and I wasn't. sort of 37% up and down continuously. This one was even bigger, sort of 51%. And then the crashes, again, feels like we're in an up position. But right now, what I would say is, look, at 200 EMA, it can't break it yet. Would like to see that break. And if it does, we got this vector candle recovery in and around, 54 cents, which I'd be suggesting it may well get to. Whether or not it breaks above that, we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, and then the last question is from Joe. He says, hi, I'm new and I'm currently working my way through the course material. Haven't come across this yet. I've been speaking to my accountant, good luck on that one, about best ways to manage my trading investment activities. And they said what I could do would be classed, or what I do is classed as investing, as my trading account is relatively small. What are the pros and cons of limited companies versus personal for trading and investing activities? The only thing I ever put a caveat on is I'm not an accountant, so you best seeking the advice of an accountant. It does seem like a lot of accountants are very varied in how they approach this. Steve, who's sort of the accountant that does talks at the Cuddles, if you are new, Cuddles are sort of like quarterly get-togethers we have down in Cambridgeshire. Steve is always there, gives a talk, and he's always happy to give some advice on it. I would definitely seek him out just to have a chat with him about it all. As far as I understand from some of the stuff Steve said, and of course this could have changed, but the HMRC does seem quite driven towards putting as much as it can in the capital gains tax rather than in income tax folders. So, unless you are a serious player doing some serious amount of trading, this is going to feel more recreational than anything else. Now, I don't know if you're just new to the group or you're new to crypto. There are tax software. So there is, I use Coinly, which is Koinlely, sorry. There's Crypto Tax Calculator, and I can't remember the other one now. But there's a few that you can just plug your wallets in. It's not 100% accurate, and that will sort of give you a sort of a report that you'll have to edit a bit to just sort of make it work right, that you could then talk through with your accountant to just see how that suits. And then if they're happy with that content, they can then use that, because it is a form that then you can submit to the HMRC. So it's definitely something worth getting involved in. In terms of pros and cons of limited companies, so funnily enough, I have a limited company that I do trading from. It is a crypto-based company. And I also do some personal investment. And I kind of feel like I've actually done mine wrong. And this is just my opinion. Again, from advice from my accountant back in the day, who, 2018, I didn't know anything about crypto, and neither did he. It was just advice he gave me to set up a limited company. But I sort of like invest money on behalf of my limited company. And I don't think that is the most economic way of doing it, because, at some stage, I'm going to have to pay corporation tax. And then if I ever want to give that money to myself, there's going to be a dividend tax as well. Whereas actually, could I have taken a director's loan from the company and invested it personally and just looked at capital gains tax? Might have been a better way of doing it. I would just say, you just consider for the limited company, how much trading are you actually doing? And is it worth having a limited company, which you have to pay your accountant extra for to manage those books each time? And he's going to charge you, £1,200, £1,500 a year, whatever. And if you're not making it, you're not doing enough to justify that, then keep it personal. But yeah, that's kind of where I sit with it. I'm not an accountant. Speak to your accountant on that, or speak to Steve at the Cuddle. Whew. Well, what time are we on? 9:05. Let's have a look at some other here. So we've done Tau. It's fallen a little bit since we talked, but it's still up 7% today. ETH showing some sort of signs of life, but let's face it, it's just not performed well. And whereas we've seen the likes of BitTensor challenge previous levels, look at this. ETH's just looking utterly disappointing. Hasn't even broken above the 50 EMA on the daily. And it's just, this is still in a downtrend as far as I'm concerned. And it would actually have to clear $2,000 and some to convince me otherwise. So still plenty of work there for that to do. To be honest, NIR's probably in a similar position. We have getting above the 618 at least, but not looking particularly great. I think maybe 250. It might be running out of juice there. Link has done sort of like a nice W formation. I know it's not the cleanest, but I like it where the right hand side isn't dropping down as low. But we're running into the 50 EMA. You can see it's actually rejected from that one quite cleanly. So just need to see how that one performs. But it's got the 800 to get through as well. I'm stubbornly holding on to my link because the last time I stubbornly sold it, it went from $8 to $24. So I'm holding on to this, which is not recommended. You know, cut your losses. Ohm, again, running into the 50 EMA. At least some form of consolidation pattern there. But needs to work out what it's doing. Not Bitcoin dominance. That's CME futures. That's not what I wanted. We've talked about dominance already. But again, you're looking at dominance, you know, now with the vectors and everything else. And I appreciate it's a percentage rather than, you know, actual price, but ultimately that is a price off of the market cap. You know, it just feels like a pullback even to 62. That would be a good move for alts. And it has been a while since we've been at the 50 EMA. We've got these vector zones here. At some stage for the actual alt season, you know, if we're going to get one this time, we actually needed to get to, you know, we need to take out this vector box down at 55. Matter of fact, I think what I'll do is I'll mark this, you know, at some stage, that vector candle there, oops, at 55, which is tying in with the 800 EMA on the daily, needs to be taken out for the actual, you know, end of the Bitcoin cycle and moving into the altcoin cycle. So that's something we need to consider. Let me just hit save on this so that stays there. That's not it, that's it. But yeah, something to think about. I said I'd talk about so the stocks. So look at the dollar. As I mentioned, the dollar has fallen. And what's that from? Well, this looks like some sort of long-term trend line. Put it on the weekly. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I was going to say that I think the dollar could fall to 96. And actually, you know, we've got the 800 EMA and this trend line that maybe suggests that'd be good. You know, that's good for us in the short term. But it's been such a strong fall that I would expect some form of pullback. You know, like you see, even if it just to the 10 EMA or the 20, again, sort of 100 to 101. So we have seen a bit of a pullback today. But strong falls like this usually get recovered on the way. S&P is recovering. So a little bit, you know, much how Bitcoin had that double bottom, maybe the S&P's starting to get the right-hand side of that double bottom. We might start to then see that move up. We'll see. It's earnings seasons at the moment. So Tesla's is out in 20 minutes, I think. So we'll be interested to see how they do. Gold. Yeah, it hit, you know, over 3,400 and it's pulling back. Peter Schiff is having a field day at the moment because it's, you know, it's doing great, but the reality of it is Bitcoin has totally outperformed this over the last 15 years. But still, gold has been moving kind of like Bitcoin. You know, I look at it some days, it's like $100 up, which is unheard of. But pretty impressive. MicroStrategy, you know, moving well, kind of at the top of this W formation. We can see how it reacts there. Nvidia's having a bit of trouble at the moment. Earnings comes out, you know, next month. I think it is beginning of next month. The Tesla results are out. Okay. Mark says, "Good advice, Harry. I am an accountant." What? I assume the good advice was speak to an accountant. Yeah, well, it's even worse when that is full on imposter syndrome for me now. No, there's an accountant there. But anyway, I suppose in Nvidia, you know, the tariff issue is a bit of a problem just with, you know, stuff that's, you know, made and manufactured in China and everything else. It's been falling from them anyway. I think obviously it's not going to go away. It's just in a period of pullback. I've actually been adding to my stocks, you know, SIPs down at this level. But yeah, I'll have to wait and see how it's gone. So you're saying that Tesla, I don't get aftermarkets on this one. Pretty big miss for the Tesla results. Well, they've had it in, I mean, yeah, it's not been great for them in terms of boycotts, factories being set on fire, you know, just hate towards Elon at the moment. I'm sure tariffs have had a problem. That's why Trump and Elon have had a bit of a falling out, haven't they, because of tariffs and China and everything else. So, bit interesting there. But the other thing is the VIX. The VIX is still fairly high. You know, the VIX is still in the 30s. We want to get it back. I mean, when it's high, you buy. That's what we were talking about, wasn't it? When you're high, you buy. And that's when we were buying. But it's still at 30. You know, we want to kind of get it back down sub 20 if we're being honest. And anything can happen up at these levels. Matter of fact, you know, it went up to 60, which is kind of unheard of, but 30 normally we're starting to get a bit nervous. So it'd be nice to see the VIX ultimately come back down. Right, it has been an hour and 10 minutes. I think I've probably rabbited on for more than enough. Thank you for everyone that answered the poll. As I say, it's you to do with it as you see fit. Most people haven't invested. It's not a question of they may well, they're just trying to understand it themselves or do really. But yeah, thank you for everyone for contributing on that. In terms of, I don't know if there's a trading pub on Thursday. I think we'll find out probably on Thursday. I know Simon's back in country, but I don't think he has a permanent residence yet. So yeah, we'll have to just wait and see how that one plays out. Next week, I will be going live again on Tuesday, as I usually do. And I'll spend 5 minutes telling you about my London Marathon, because I'll be telling everyone about it then. And the other thing is there's a cuddle coming up. I can't remember the exact date. I think it's like the 13th of May, something like that. But if not already out, get your tickets booked. I'll be there as usual. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but I'll be talking about something. Maybe why I've changed my mind and subnets are the best thing in the world. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy looking at your Delta and your portfolios at the moment. God knows for the last 10 weeks, it's been a struggle to open it up and look at it. Have the courage now to do it. And yeah, I'm back. I'll be back in Discord trying to help people out where we can. And I will speak to you all next week. Have a good one, everyone. Cheers now.